everyone. Welcome to the Lahore Literary Festival. My name is Sikander Bizenjo. I am the co-founder of Balochistan Youth Action Committee, BYAC. With me today, we have Nilofer Qazi. She is the author of an amazing book called The Culinary Tales from Balochistan. She has done this amazing food tour across Balochistan and she has documented it. Nilofer, if you can quickly introduce yourself to the viewers here.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for having me at the Lahore Literary Festival. Lovely to meet you, Sikander Bizenjo, a fellow person from Balochistan. It's wonderful that we have two members of Balochistan at the Literary Festival this year. I apologize for not being in person in Lahore for this lovely festival. Which I have attended many, many years. And my name is Nilofer Afridi Qazi. I have both names in my name. From Balochistan, I'm a Qazi from Pishin. And then I'm a Afridi from now KPK. Culinary Tales from Balochistan is a labor of love. It is a culmination of a self-imposed need to food map Pakistan, which meant documenting Pakistan's culinary heritages, which are invisible. So if the food and recipes which are widely available in our imagination and in the physical, both in print or in the dhabas and restaurants, I was not interested in that heritage. But those recipes and those food traditions which were not, that was the scope of my journey. So Balochistan is the first book of, inshallah, a series of 4, because we have 4 provinces. That is what I would like to do, inshallah.
Amazing. Thank you, Nilofer. You use the word invisible, so that sort of highlights why you started from Balochistan, the food. Would you mind walking us through your life's journey? How did you come about being an author of a culinary book in Pakistan?
Sikander, I don't actually see myself as an author. Writing, even though I'm a public policy professional, was not my strongest strength. Like research, yes, advocacy, yes, human rights, yes, but writing really was not, and even after the book, is not something that comes naturally to me. But the importance and the need for it, I think, kind of made me walk this very unsure path. So doing the research and traveling and meeting, the incredible men and women in the districts of Balochistan. As you know, there are 26, but I managed to go for the book, I've gone to 13. And there are many parts of Balochistan which I have not been to, which, inshallah, there's always time to go. But I have been very, very careful and conscientious to represent North Balochistan, Central Balochistan, South Balochistan, and the coastal Balochistan. This has been, like a very key, very conscientious effort, because lack of representation has been a fundamental problem of those of us who are from Balochistan. So I was not going to make that mistake in my own endeavor. The life journey, Sikander, it's a bit, it's long, but basically, in 2005, I returned to Pakistan after over 20 years. And unfortunately, as you know, we had this horrendous earthquake, which impacted 9 districts of this country. So my work with the United Nations gave me a very rare privilege of being able to travel across Pakistan. Then in 2010, when we had an horrendous flood which impacted even more districts in this country. It gave me an opportunity to see even more parts of Pakistan. Through all of this, what I realized was that the food on offer in the public spaces seemed to be repetitive and similar, irrespective of which province we were at. But I knew instinctively that this was not the actual sum total of what is actually our culinary heritages. And so I was very curious and dug a little bit and realized that as we hide so much and as we pretend so much, as we choose to privilege so much, and as we selectively promote that which is only Pakistan or Pakistani, we were doing this to our culinary heritage. So we can manufacture and we can, sort of pretend and, beat the drums and use it as a mascot. This is what is Pakistani. But, food does not hide who we are, where we come from, and where we at a development level, at a socioeconomic level, at an agricultural level. So we can pretend as much as we want in other spheres, but I was very curious and also found it important and necessary that someone begins the collection of food mapping Pakistan. And we start with Balochistan. It's a very personal reason why I start from Balochistan. It is my paternal hometown. It is also happens to be the largest province of this country and also the most invisible. So a very long answer to your first question.
Very, very reflective of what you did in the book. So I think I had the privilege of being one of the early readers of your book.
Absolutely.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I being a native from Balochistan, from central Balochistan in Khuzdar, I was constantly thinking, I've never heard of this thing. I've never heard of this thing as well. So I think that is amazing that you're documenting it, because I was speaking to one of my friends just a few weeks ago on circularity, and I was sharing what we used to do in the village, and she's like, were you able to document it? We're like, no. And she was just saying that these things will die down from generations if you don't document it. So I think it's very essential that you've taken this step of documenting it. So I'm very happy. So Nilofer, talking about your book and obviously about the amazing food that you highlighted there, so a lot of the things that I read were unheard of in many parts of the world, and even many parts of the country as well. But there's one specific dish that I thought have completely been under the radar. That's called Landi, or in Balochi called tabaig. Would you mind talking about that for a minute or two?
Yes, of course. Actually, I would say Landi is one of the probably better known ones, nationwide. In fact, I'll show you, I have some Landi, which I made and brought to Islamabad as well. And Landi is the ancient method of curing lamb. And so why would anyone want to cure lamb? So there's obviously a environmental reason. There's a socioeconomic reason. So it tells you about that region which chooses to cure meat. And which meat, which tells you about their linkages to animal husbandry. And, so that they have range land and they are nomads, for example. So the type of food tells you, why this food is made in a particular way. And, it's a conversation, and an insight into a people, culture, location as well. So Landi is cured lamb, as I said. Originally, it was only cured with salt and hing. And that itself was a very interesting revelation for me, because as Pakistanis, we always associate hing with Indians. Oh, Indian food, and that smell, and it's so not Pakistani. And in fact, most of the recorded recipes in Pakistani cookbooks do not use hing, and when it does, it's a fusion or an inculcation or, an influence from our eastern neighbor. But that is factually incorrect. Hing grows in Balochistan. It's used as a preservative rather than as a condiment for flavor. So, that itself was quite, a very interesting revelation for me. Now, of course, because with all the masalas and, intra-trade, of course, the masala mix, as they call it for Landi, includes chili, cumin, haldi, and dalchini, cloves, cinnamon. So, because the taste buds to some extent, have changed. But most people, and they always ask you, do you want it sada or do you want it with masala? Those who want to, make it. But another very important point is Landi, of course, is cured meat, but it is no longer accessible as such to everyone because meat has become very, very expensive. So it's a marker also of your socioeconomic status.
Right. Very interesting. That is true. That is true.
Would you like me to show you some Landi?
Please.
Trying to keep it dry, because it's very important for Landi to remain dry.
And Nilofer, in our part of Balochistan, we use pomegranate seeds, dry pomegranate seeds.
Yes, that's tabahik. That's tabahik. So let's see if you can see.
Amazing. And how do you cook it? How do you cook it?
Okay, so Landi is dehydrated cured meat. So once you're ready to cook it, you have to rehydrate it. So in obviously traditional setups, you don't have a pressure cooker, but so today, many households have pressure cookers. So you first rehydrate it with a little bit of water. And then once it's softened, then you can either make it in a simple Landi pulao. The recipe is in the book. And or a lot of because the Landi fat is also cured. The fat can be used in spinach, which is the most common dish and recipe that is made, Landi palak, and or in Landi lentils. Now, lentils is a relatively more contemporary recipe. You would imagine it's actually would be very traditional, but lentils are not ancient naturally to Balochistan. So now you have a little bit of subsistence lentil growing in Balochistan, but it's one of the provinces where lentil doesn't actually grow.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for bringing the Landi.
The tabahik that you mentioned is also a recipe in the book. Tabahik is the cured goat meat in the coastal areas. So it's cured in less cold environments, because Landi requires a very extreme, dry, low temperature. But for tabahik, you can do it in, relatively more humid environments. And because of the natural linkages with Iran, the use of pomegranate powder, is apparent in the recipe. Also, it is linked with curing after the slaughter of Badi Eid. So when we sacrifice meat of any form, and there may be any leftover, and there's little refrigeration, and little electricity, even if you had refrigeration or gas, which is very, as you know, prevalent in Balochistan, you cure the very precious meat. So tabahik is goat meat cured with pomegranate powder and salt.
Right. Perfect. I think I'm drooling already over all this talk of the food. So let me slightly go somewhere else from food and then come back. In your book, you mentioned that you visited Mehrgarh, the site of
Yes,
Mehrgarh,
yes, yes.
ancient civilization, which is 9,000 years old. Unfortunately, unfortunately, not just for Balochistan or for Pakistan, but for the world, that this site is undiscovered. We do not know much about it. We
Yes.
have not invested a lot of time, our energy, or resources in it. Would you
Ji.
mind walking us through what did you see there? What else can be done?
Gee, I was so excited. I cannot tell you when, I had the opportunity to go to Mehrgarh, which is in Bolan district. And Mehrgarh is the cradle of the agricultural civilization of all of South Asia. We understand, the Indus civilization and Mohenjo-daro, which is an incredible space. And a lot of books have been written, a lot of documentaries have been done, a lot of people have visited it, and the government, to some extent, has also excavated with the help of foreigners and maintained it to some extent. But when we go to Mehrgarh, which is on multiple mounds, which are basically, mud hills, sand hills, soft mud hills, and many various villages of the Rind tribe and the Raisani tribe primarily, we see nothing, absolutely nothing. And then when you really attempt to go to the 1974 excavation mound site, you can see, like a little bit of, like the side areas that were excavated. But then I was told later that a lot of the sites were actually recovered because they knew that the Balochistan government, both central and then the federal government in the center, the various ministries, I don't want to take them by name to embarrass them, but we all know who they are, were frankly uninterested, And so there's not even a signboard. Can you imagine? Let alone a synopsis of where wheat was cultivated first, in a settlement way, in a organized fashion, which then created the foundations of being able to build towns and villages, then which led to, having, the basic idea of a settlement, boundaries, canals, water management, pottery, etc., which comes with human settlement, moving from nomadic living to settled living. And the oldest site, so it beyond broke my heart. And in the book, I described my interviews, my meetings, and, what did the villagers would say, and also one or two recipes which still reflect that kind of civilizational marker, where you cooked before you had proper utensils to make certain food. So, I mean, those of you who are watching, buy the book and see those recipes in that chapter.
Yep, and we are not going to mention those right now. That is for you to from the book. Thank you, Nilofer. That's really heartbreaking and sad to know, and obviously not to my surprise as well, that Mehrgarh is completely disregarded in that sense. I think it's a treasure for the entire world. It's a treasure for the world. I hope we make.
You see, Sikander, the world comes in, frankly, for me as a Pakistani, the world comes second. I want our own citizens, to have an understanding of our own culture, our own heritages, food, civilizational, architecturally, in every form, celebrate ourselves, celebrate from where we came from, and preserve what we have.
Indeed. Thank you. let's move back to the food bit as well. Nilofer, there's one thing that you mentioned that you called it the nomad's bread, the
Ji.
kosht khuni. I've never heard of this.
Khusht kuni, yeah. Well, it's again mentioned in one of the chapters, which shares many varieties of breads of Balochistan. Yeah. I didn't realize till, like I was traveling and researching that how many varieties of bread we have in Balochistan. I think people will only think of like the Roghni naan, as such, but believe you me, they are like many. So this particular one is again reflective of those who had to travel between very long distances with very welcoming or environments where perhaps there would be no hamlet where they would be able to seek like a hearth where they could cook or find someone else to cook for them or find ingredients to cook. So what they would do is bake a certain kind of bread which was packed with extra nourishments and flavors. So it's not just, like wheat and water and salt and, like baked, but they packed levels of nourishment and flavor in it and then traveled, which lasted multiple days before they could find a hamlet or a village or another, nomadic tribe or their end location. So they were able to survive in that period. And also the recipe allowed them that if they did run out of it, that they could gather those ingredients, which I'm not going to mention here, and they could make it in the wild,
On the go.
Yes, on the go. If they had the ability to strike a fire, that they needed to do. They would definitely need to do, but without any utensils. So that's very key. Because if we go back and you look at the environment, the recipes developed based on the environment that they were in. And these recipes allow that.
It is fascinating.
Which is
They're
fascinating.
Still continuing. I think that is a fascinating piece for sure.
Ji, bilkul.
Anyone, Nilofer, anyone from Balochistan, they're very familiar with this dish called kurud or shilanch.
Yes. Again, here's Croth.
Oh, you have it.
Croth. Now, shilanch, the recipe of shilanch is in my Gwadar episode, but Croth, as you pointed out, literally is a exclusively Balochistan ingredient, which we use in many recipes. So this dehydrated, fermented milk, because, many people say, oh, it's dehydrated milk, but it isn't, because in the book, we share the recipe of how you make Croth. It has I love the smell. It has a very strong aroma, and it has very distinct flavor palette. So not everyone, enjoys it, but it has a very strong, influence on the dish. And so we use this as a sauce. We use this in integrating it into a rice dish as well. We pour it over, the various kinds of bread, of course, and in also various soupy concoctions, so it's a very versatile and important ingredient, one of the three fundamental Balochistani ingredients.
And I must
there
have
are 3 recipes in the book using Croth.
Yeah, and a
It
must
also,
have.
and also this is an ingredient which tells us our linkages to Central Asia. We are
Right.
Central Asian people because we share this particular form of eating for a particular terrain that we share.
Hmm. Very interesting. Very interesting. I did not know that for sure. There's so many things that I did not know. I think I have to reread your book and enjoy all the things as well. There's so many different kinds of food that you mentioned. Fascinating. Obviously, we do not have a lot of time to discuss on all of them. So I've just highlighted a few that I wanted to discuss. Kurd being one of them, Tabaik being another. You mentioned another thing which was very fascinating. You mentioned about thing called Burdus, or the goat's shoulder, and how people used it to find water, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. One of the major, but apparent, they were telling me it also tells you your fate.
Okay,
No,
interesting.
I mean, it was very interesting. Yes, the shoulder bone of the goat,
Yeah,
um, Bardasht, which is Bardasht in Balochi,
yeah,
or they could have been saying it in Bravi,
yeah,
so they, in this water deficit area, uh, where do they dig for water? Especially
yeah.
in areas where they didn't have a carré system, which was the ancient
Uh,
way of creating canals by, linking the ground table water and the uh, water channels underneath to feed above.
hmm,
So you had these gifted people,
hmm,
who were able to identify where to dig for water. And they used the shoulder bone of the goat. I found it very, very interesting, and hence I mention it here in the book. But I have to be truthful. We used a similar water seeker in
hmm.
Islamabad. Like
Okay.
where we also have, water deficit areas, and many people have also dug wells, and so they also use these water specialists who come and tell you, dig here. And lo and behold, there's water.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I think we don't have the technology, but we still have the means to find water. That's how civilization survived. And you want to know more about how to find water using a goat's bone?
Why
The
not?
book is yours. Thank you, thank you. Nilofer, I think in the interest of time, I'm going to shorten the questions as well. I have so much to discuss. Maybe if you can highlight one dish from different geographical areas that you find very fascinating, just three or four, maybe.
I'm telling you the most interesting ingredients that I found.
Yeah.
I mean, I will not privilege anyone over the other, but this ingredient, schnee.
Yeah. Okay. A bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
schnee.
you can see it. Okay. Yeah, we can see it. Perfect.
Okay. So schnee I found in heap loads, carts
Right.
full, all
Yeah.
over Quetta and Pishin and Killa Saifulla, all Mastung. And I wondered, what is this? What is this? And I smelled it and I was like, wait a minute, like it smells a little pistachio-y, but
Hmm.
who knows? It doesn't look like a pistachio. And I would ask, like, ye kya hai? What is this? What is this? And all sorts of, like answers would emerge. But at the end, I realized they didn't quite know. Some said, oh, I think it's zaitun, it's olives. But when one does one's research, we realize that it could not possibly be zaitun and olives because there are no fruit bearing olive trees in Balochistan. All the fruit bearing olives that we have in this country are cross breeds. They've been grafted. So I asked the National Agricultural Research Center in Islamabad. They were very helpful, and they identified schnee. This is called schnee as a ancient wild pistachio bead. And this
Wow.
is, again, very, very common snack where they chew in a particular way um, across northern and central Balochistan, and I believe maybe also in Fata areas, the former Fata areas. Now, schnee is a snack. So, of
Yeah.
course, as a researcher, I was like, what else do we do with this? Like, I mean, there must be something that we can use it with. And what is the traditional way? Now, I will tell you two things. One is that locally it is used, of course, as a snack, but also schnee soup, where the recipe is in the book as well, and the oil. So incredible pistachio oil, which is used to cook. But I couldn't find anything else. But I did find a very innovative
Yeah.
and very modern way of using schnee to make a beverage to drink like coffee in Turkey.
Wow. Okay. Very
And
interesting.
yes, and I have begun to collaborate with a friend to see if we can make that in Pakistan. Because nowhere else in the world, other than this one area in Turkey, not even Turkey nationwide, in one area where they also have pistachios as abundantly as we do, but they innovated and modernized the use of Chardonnay. And I'm going to see if we can do it here.
That is
So
incredible.
it's a very long answer to your question, but Schnee fascinates, it continues to fascinate me. You know, it was
Amazing.
incredible, really incredible. Of another recipe, which actually, which I was looking for, and I was very happy to find, but in the coastal areas of Balochistan, were related to fish. Because most Pakistanis don't associate fish as a fundamental part of their culinary landscape.
Right.
You think about
Right.
it. How many Pakistani households eat fish? They're nervous about it, or like they fry it to death. So basically, you're not eating fish.
We don't know about it.
And we don't know about. And how is it that we don't know about it with the kind of coastal line that we have? From Karachi all the way to Gwadar, we have this incredible Arabian Sea, and yet we are so disconnected from seafood life. So there are several fish recipes, including dried fish, in the book, which I leave to you, and a conversation actually around seafood. Which I think would be interesting for a lot of Pakistanis, their relationship with seafood.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank
So
you, Nilofer.
I would leave it at that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for summing it up so well. Nilofer, my last question to you, obviously, we have so many questions. I want to discuss it. I hope we get a chance to see you in person as well and discuss all the food that we discussed today. But a lot of people think Balochistan is unsafe. Should we go there? Can we go there? Can we try out these food? What do you say about that?
That's a very complicated. It's not a simple answer, and to be honest, I am a very privileged person. I have access. I roamed around very safely, very confidently, but I also have to acknowledge my privilege. So I had cars. I had a driver. I had places to go to, which were prearranged. And in some instances, like I was linked to organizations who gave me access to households where these recipes are cooked in private spaces. Now, very few can just arrive in Quetta and just, start traveling without interference. This is a fact. So I was lucky. I had the confidence. I was curious enough, and I was determined enough. It's
Yeah,
not that I
exactly.
did not have interference, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But I'm a Qazi, and I'm a Qazi from Balochistan. So um, this is our province, this is our country. So I will go in my province wherever I want, whenever I want, as a citizen of Pakistan. So let's leave it at
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and where there's a will, there's a way for sure. And you can try these things in cities as well. You don't have to go deep inside. You can try a lot of these things in Quetta. I think that's a wonderful way to sum it up. I have this mug with me, and there's a quote in Balochi. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Wahe Watan Hushkindar. That means, however barren our land is, it's worth anything, it's worth treasures. So there's so many hidden treasures across this beautiful country, not just the province. So do explore as much as you can. Thank you, Nilofer, for being with us, and
Thank you.
Literary Festival for hosting this.
Thank you so much, Sikander, and thank you, Lahore Literary Festival, and the entire team to allow me to speak on my first book. Do buy it.